Okay, cool. Also, just as a preface, our co-president, Amanda, she's going to be looking in the chat for any questions that people might have during the conference. We're going to try to answer as much as we can during the end. So if you have any questions that come up, just feel free to put it in the chat. Okay. All right. So now that that's out of the way, I want to thank everyone for coming to our conference. For those of you that are in the acapella community, we really appreciate you acknowledging the issue at hand and working together with us to create steps on how to combat it. For those of you not in the acapella community, we appreciate your support and your allyship in coming tonight. A lack of diversity is something that goes beyond just the acapella community. It's something that pervades all aspects of our lives. So regardless of the reason why, for whatever reason you're here tonight, just know that we see you, we thank you for supporting us. Okay, so here's a brief overview of how the conference is going to go. We're just going to do an introductory activity. We're going to go through the data that we've collected over the past couple of weeks. We're going to introduce our speaker, hear from those in the acapella community, and then go out into breakout rooms to kind of work on concrete solutions. Okay, so to start off, I'll introduce myself. Hi, I'm Kayleen. I'm a junior, and I'm currently the president of the Sweethearts. So obviously, I'll kind of be the moderator for this event tonight. Okay, so why are we here? It's a very good question. So when I first thought about having an event like this, I really just meant for it to be a conversation. I wanted it to be an outlet for POC members within the acapella community, just to make sure that their voices are heard. So as a PSA to the white members of the community that are here tonight, I ask that you take a step back and take the time while we go through this conference to really process and absorb what's being said. Obviously, everything that we're stating isn't meant to offend or isn't meant to get defensive about, but we just want you to sympathize and empathize to what we as POC members have been feeling throughout the years. And to the POC members of this community, this conference really is for you. So I hope that by the end of this, that you'll see that you're not alone with your feelings and your experiences, and that there are people within this community that stand by you, that respect you and appreciate you. Okay, so we're gonna ask that everyone change their name to fit the following format. You can look at my little box as an example. You're just gonna put your name, your pronouns, and your race and ethnicity. So obviously, once again, if you're uncomfortable with doing this, there is no pressure, but for the rest of us here, we do ask that you please do this. Just in order to do that, you're just gonna go to the participants tab. You're gonna hover over your name, and where it says mute/more, you can press more and then click rename and then just do it. So I'll just give everyone a couple of seconds so they can sort that out. Okay. All right, so to start us off, we're gonna do an activity. So basically, I'm just gonna ask you a series of questions, and if you feel as if what we ask applies to you, or that you can relate to any of these questions, or we're just gonna ask that you raise your hand. We have a little picture there, so obviously you just go to the participants tab and there should be an option to do so. If you're having technical troubles, you can raise your hand physically as well. Some of these questions are directed towards the acapella community, so obviously if you're not in an acapella group, then you don't need to raise your hand. So. Okay, so just to start off, I'm gonna list a couple of artists. As you can see, the first one is Taylor Swift. So you're just gonna raise your hand, and if you recognize them, as a bonus, you can put some of your favorite songs in the chat, you know, raise the awareness for the artist. So raise your hand if you know Taylor Swift. All right, raise your hand if you know Cher. Celine Dion. The Beach Boys. Chainsmokers. It's a classic. Okay, now raise your hand if you know Beyonce. Okay. Summer Walker. Okay. Nina Simone. BOYZ II Men. It's classic. Aaliyah. Okay, now raise your hand if you know Selena. This doesn't mean Gomez. I don't mean Gomez here, guys. I mean Selena, so. Okay. All right, Bad Bunny. Jennifer Lopez. Carlos Santana. JUANES. All right, BTS. I had to put it in there. I had to put it in there, guys. You already know. Sorry. Nicki. Rich Brian. Arashi. Okay. All right. So thanks to everyone. Now we're going to ask some questions pertaining to the BU acapella community, or just the BU community specifically. Okay. So raise your hand if you believe in racism. Yep. Okay. All right. Raise your hand if you believe that BU, or whichever school that you go to if you're not from BU, is a diverse school. Raise your hand if you believe that the BU acapella community is diverse, and obviously if you're in an acapella group not at BU, do you believe that your acapella community is diverse? All right. Now raise your hand if you're in a group where there's more than one South Asian member. Okay. If there's more than one East Asian member, there's more than one Black member, there's more than one Latinx member, and if there's more than one white member. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. So now we're just going to go over the data that we've collected over the past month. So based on the survey that everyone filled out, we compiled just a bunch of graphs of the demographics of the acapella community. I'm going to give the floor over to Nika. She worked on the compilation and analysis of these graphs, so I'll just let her explain the breakdown of everything.
Hi, guys. Yeah, so like Kayleen said, we sent out a survey about a month ago to the BU acapella community and asked them to respond to a couple of questions. So while diversity and inclusion is in no way just about filling a quota, we were interested in looking at some numbers to gain a little more concrete perspective on the issue. So first, we looked at the demographic breakdown of BU as a comparison point. And one thing to note is that they have a category for non-resident alien, which we took to mean international students. And this does significantly alter the data by placing a large number of people, which is 21% of the BU undergrad population, that are in multiple race categories, all into one group with this umbrella and very non-descriptive label. But beyond that, as you can see, the breakdown is 37% white, 15% Asian, 11% Hispanic, 4% Black, and then 11% other or unknown. Okay, and then we looked at the demographic breakdown of the acapella community. You can go to the next slide, thanks. Based on the data we collected from the survey, we sent out to all 12 of the acapella groups, and we received responses from 133 people. So we tried to get responses from as many people in the community as possible to make the data as accurate as we could, but we missed responses from a couple people from multiple of the groups. And then also, unfortunately, we did not receive any responses from Kolakad, so that group is not represented in this breakdown. But based on responses to the what is your ethnicity and race question, we placed people's responses into the broader categories white, Asian, Hispanic, Black, 2 or more races, and other. We wanted to go a little further into depth beyond these broad categories, but as some people answered simply Asian, for example, and others answered Asian/Filipino or Asian/Indian, we put everybody in the category Asian. And then also, although Hispanic is an ethnic category, not a race category, some people answered white Hispanic while others just answered Hispanic. So we had to lump all of those answers together into one broad category. And as you can see, white and Asian people are overrepresented in the acapella community as compared to the BU demographics. These two categories combined make up 83% of the acapella population. And then, though this is not the main point of the conference, We also briefly considered gender representation because intersectionality is important. However, BU does their gender breakdown within the binary of male and female, so it wasn't very helpful to compare it to the demographics of the BU a cappella community. But as you can see from the graph, BU is 61% female and 39% male. And then based on the BU a cappella community's answers to our surveys, we saw that they report being 63% cis female, 33% cis male, 3% gender queer, gender non-conforming or non-binary, and then less than 1% reported being trans male, and then less than 1% preferred not to answer the question. Okay, and then we wanted to go a bit beyond just numbers. So we also asked you guys to report to what extent have you been negatively impacted by lack of diversity within the a cappella community on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not very impacted and 5 at the other end of the spectrum. So we represented these numbers with varying shades of purple. The lightest purple is 1, not very affected, and the darkest is 5, very negatively impacted. And what we saw is the most impacted with only 3s and 5s as responses is Black students in BU a cappella. And then beyond that, it's a little bit hard to quantify who reported being the most negatively impacted, but it is interesting to note that Asian students in a cappella seem to be the least negatively affected by the lack of diversity, at least based on their responses to the survey. And then we also asked you to report, prior to completing the survey, have you given any thought to the lack of diversity within the a cappella community? Yes or no, but I have now. And then once again, we broke these responses up by race category, and we saw that a lot of people actually had thought about the lack of diversity prior to us asking this question. However, the white and Asian students who answered the survey most often reported not having considered it before completing our survey. In fact, nearly 50% of Asian respondents and over 25% of white respondents had not given any thought to the lack of diversity, which is interesting when you look back at the demographics of the BU a cappella community. And then every Black student or person who we put in the other category reported that they actually had thought about it before now. Or sorry, wait, yes, okay.
All right, thank you, Tanika, for sharing this data. It's a lot to think about. I definitely didn't realize a lot of what was revealed with everything that we had collected with our data. So I just think it's pretty interesting. Okay, so now we're gonna introduce our speaker for tonight. So we have with us Oompa. So Oompa is a nationally acclaimed Boston-born poet, rapper, educator who is forever representing the queer, Black, orphaned hood kids in them. She was named one of NPR's 2020 Slingshot artists to watch, and her engaging interactive performing style won her the Boston Music Award for the Live Act of the Year in 2019, following her 2018 Unsigned Artist of the Year victory among an unprecedented 12 total nominations. In a 2019 feature, WBUR's The Artery described the lyric-focused rapper as having a natural tenderness with language and calls her verses funny, incisive, and memorable. Oompa showed this poetic prowess as winner of the 2017 Woman of the World Poetry Slam and a finalist in the 2016 National Poetry Slam. With the release of her newest album, Cleo, Oompa has sold out the Sinclair and a number of other Boston venues. She's been featured by the NPR, the Huffington Post, Boston Globe, Boston Magazine, WGBH, Dig Boston, and NBC 10, and is a recipient of the 2019 Border Thomas Fellowship, enriching Boston and the world beyond her work. I've actually also included a quote from one of the songs on her album. I just thought it was really, really powerful, and it kind of reinforced what the goal of today is, which is basically to uplift and support one another and just to make sure that everyone has a voice and is heard. So without further ado, please give a virtual round of applause for Oompa.
Hey, hello.
Hi.
How y'all doing? That was, somebody wrote the mess out of that bio, huh?
Yeah.
How y'all doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you so much for taking the time to come here. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions, and you'll just, I don't know, give your thoughts and your experiences on everything. Okay.
For sure.
Okay. So my first question is, as a POC in the music industry, can you speak on a specific instance where you've ever felt disadvantaged as a result of your race? If you've ever felt alienated or isolated from the music industry as a result of your race in the past?
Dang, I think yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
I'm primarily a hip hop artist, so I think it's not necessarily a personal experience, but like a genre specific one as it like, yeah, I guess as it relates to Black people. But yeah, like up until I want to say even this year, and it still continues in some venues. Some venues wouldn't want to bring us in, although like there have been, like, I guess some of the data shows that a lot of rock shows have a lot more bar fights and that kind of thing. People still suspected that having hip hop in their venues meant that they had to hire or have a certain level of security to monitor different activity that would be happening in these venues. And so as a result, they didn't think it was worth the risk. And so they would, like not hire us or not let us use their venues. And it wasn't until we started using like DIY venues and living rooms and stuff, like back porches and stuff like that, and people were making, their full-time living off of those backyard shows, that they were like, let's get in on that. And so here we are, able to get in some venues and still not others. And I know that's very specific to the genre, which is very specific to Black culture and Black people. So I think that's one example. I think in terms of the industry at large, I think as the industry hoards a lot of different wealth and wealth opportunities, and wealth in America is gate kept by race and racism in a lot of ways. I think that there's ways that I don't necessarily even notice immediately that I'm impacted by, the exclusionary practices of the music industry. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely did. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. So my next question is, what are your thoughts on the topic of cultural appropriation in music? So like just as an example, like if non-POCs use music styles and sounds that originated in POC culture, because I know that definitely happens a lot. So love to hear your take on that.
My thoughts. Oh shoot. How much time we got? No. I think the thing is that I recognize the power and permeability, I think is the word I want to use. I don't know if I made that up. Not sure if it's a real word, but it's a word today. I just know how rich the culture is and know how rich the music is. And so I think I will expect that other people recognize that richness and that wealth in the music. I think the problem is that an artist who can originate or pioneer or do these different things can be left again outside of success in the music industry, even if they're the ones who pioneer or like cultivate or are part of the culture that reflects the music or the art that they're a part of. And so I think that in large part, I think my biggest problem with appropriation is how many people who make the music and the culture are left outside of the conversation. And then the other part of it is, I think that, in no other genre can you, I guess that's not true, but I guess it's frowned upon anywhere, but like you can't just take from someone or like fit into their mode and their medium and take their art and it not be, and not give credit or not give praises due to it. And I feel like maybe it's because I'm in music and I feel like it's personal, but like poetry styles, right? One can argue whose style is like whose, but then there's genres of music that were made by Black people and developed and grown by Black people. And one, they never get the credit, like rock and roll, bluegrass, blues, jazz, like all started with Black people, as a lot of us know. And it's like, I think a lot of Black people don't even know that. I was teaching some young people a couple years ago, and they I was trying to get their sense of who started this music or whatever, and they had no idea that like Garth Brooks wasn't the first country singer in the world, different things like that. And so I think that I have a lot of feelings about it, but I think the primary thing I wish would happen is that folks give credit or know when it's appropriate to be in the culture, like to be a witness to the culture, and when it's appropriate to step back and be a spectator of the culture. At no point in time do I think it's appropriate to unzip somebody's skin, step into it, zip it up, and wear it as their own.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think what I got from what you're saying is just that there's a difference between appreciation and appropriation. representation for sure.
Yeah.
Like even in music videos where you see people who are like non-Black and they just like appropriate the style. They have like the do-rags, they have the cornrows.
Like, what you do-ragging, son?
It's a little confusing, to be honest. So I definitely like, and I'm not even, you know, in the music industry. So like, it's just something as a spectator, just watching all like music videos and just hearing different musical artists and their styles and just seeing how that's like taken from Black culture and not necessarily always recognized. Yeah, that's definitely been a process for sure.
Yeah, and it's also like, it's like, you know, it's one thing to be a practitioner, right? It's one thing to, it's even one thing to be like, hey, you know, I grew up on R&B music or rap music, and so that's what I do. And it's another thing to then capitalize off of it in a way that there's so many cats out here that are way more talented than I could use a name, insert name, and they will never see the light of day, no matter how hard the hustle goes for them. But you know, the minute that someone else who's like more marketable because they satisfy the palate of, you know, America listening to music, they're the people who are benefiting, and that's the part that really sucks.
Definitely. Something that was interesting to find out, like the category of blue-eyed soul. And I just recently found out about this and how it's like this distinction from, I was just, you know, and like it's under the artist like Sam Smith and Adele. I'm like, yeah, like I see that they've definitely got like the tone and like the sound, but it's kind of, it was just a little weird to see that there was like a need to kind of isolate from Black culture in that way, which is very, very interesting.
Yeah. And I can see the intention of that being like, how do we differentiate between what happens here and like not to separate them from Black culture? I could see that argument that, you know, like that folks are trying to honor soul music, but it's like, nah, son, like they're under the category of soul music. And if you ask who their inspirations are constantly, they'll tell you Aretha, Ray Charles, you know, Stevie Wonder, like, so we can't deny that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it's really cool, just like what you're doing with your music and your sound and how you're pairing that with your activism. So I just want to ask, like, how has activism really played a role in your music and what you create and vice versa?
Yeah, I think my activism, I would say that my goal is, one, for me to stay alive and be well. And so like how is my wellness connected to other Black people, other brown people, other queer people, other, you know, orphans, other formerly like all it, how is my ability to stay alive and get free related to theirs, you know, like it's all related. And so for me, it's like not even a second thought, it's a primary thought. Like it's I do what I do, like musically, to stay alive. And so all the choices that I make outside of music or in career or, you know, just in my personal life are related. Like none of them, in my opinion, I mean, every human has complexities and contradictions, but I think that for me, they're one and the same with staying alive, and then one and the same with saying, hey, you're a human and I care about you. And so whether that's teaching or fighting or writing or whatever it is, showing up as a friend, as an auntie, as a sister, as a mother, as a generational curse breaker, whatever it is, I think it's all tied into my personal and community like freedom.
Yeah,
I think
I definitely see that's like the reason why I included the lyrics from your song. I think it's really, really powerful, and it just shows that like for those of us who are kind of feeling alone in this struggle and this, like, they kind of just need someone to be there as a supporting force. So I think it's really cool that you're kind of extending yourself out to be that force for sure.
Thank you. It's almost like at some point I think I was like extending it, and at another point it's just like, you know, in the same way that you wake up and you're a daughter or a sister or a cousin or uncle or whatever you are, you just are it, and you just show up in that and you make meaning of it every day. So even the moments when I don't have it, it's like I know there's somebody somewhere looking and in community with me and or needing something, and I'm needing something from them. And so a lot of times it keeps me going. So I'm grateful for it.
Definitely. Okay, so my next question is, do you feel like sometimes it can be difficult to maintain relevance as an artist? Because I know that with music, it's very, to be frank, like very white, very mainstream, kind of trendy. So like, how do you strike that balance between trying to relate to majority white population as well as to minority groups?
I don't try. I write, and that's it. I write. I don't like. Yeah, I'm not trying to do anything for anybody or to anybody. I guess I'm trying to do something inside of people. Like I'm not. I guess I'm not even trying. My hope is that when I make that it resonates. My hope is that they like it. My hope, all these things. But my biggest concern of late has been, how do I love a thing I make because it lives? Not because it does anything for me, not because it doesn't do anything for me or does something for someone else, but just because it's a life form. And the way I want to be seen as like lovable because I'm a life form, I try to love those things that I make in the same way. And I'm not, I'm in an industry, right? I'm in the business of entertaining. I'm in the business of making music in a way that is successful and defined by, like my ability to pay my bills and eat and amass wealth or whatever the case is. And so I know that there are these ways that I should be thinking about it, but I leave that to my team, my team to think about that kind of stuff. For me, it's like, does this align with my beliefs? Do I feel good when I make it? Does it come from a genuine place? And I find that in those moments where I'm caught up in making for someone else, people don't hear it, or it gets limited to those people that I had in mind once upon a time. Whereas if I'm making something that comes from the heart, I think all art is trying to get us back to our human selves. It's trying to help us understand what it's like to live as a human on this earth. And so if I'm really genuinely tapping into that experience, more people are going to listen to it and find something in it than if I just try, to corner them like this particular side of the market. So I don't try, I guess, anymore is the answer. Yeah.
No, I think it's really cool. And I think one of the things that I really like is the fact that you kind of stay true to yourself and stay true to your sound. I think as I was like listening to your album on repeat, admittedly.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's really great, by the way. And there's just so many lyrics that I personally resonated with. I think in your intro song where you said, ever made a half gallon last 6 days, like that is definitely something that I've had to do. Yeah, like, so I definitely, like, it's an experience that can't necessarily be transferred over if you haven't really felt that kind of oppression, if you haven't felt like that discrimination. So I, for one, really appreciate you not trying to give into like what's trendy, what's necessarily popular, and you staying true to like who you are and your sound.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'd say two more things on that. One, it's like, I feel like, if I said, have you ever made a half gallon stretch you 6 days, made a patty with cheese stretch you cross 6 ways or whatever, there are people who don't relate to that. But if I told you about how rich I was and about a Lambo and about all these inaccessible things that a small fraction of people have, it's like, like even the empathy, like even the sympathy, even the, I don't understand that, but I feel you. I feel for you. Like that gives me context into some other person's human experience. I would rather that all day than to tell you about a car I don't have or that I had to rent to show you I had it. I ain't for that. And the other thing that I was gonna say, forgot it.
That's okay. Honestly, happens to me all the time. Totally fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think my last question is just like, if you have a to everyone who's here, like to the non-POC members, to the POC members, just like words of wisdom, words of advice, anything like that.
I see. Well, one fun fact, I was in an a cappella group in undergrad. I was too afraid to sing back then, but I was a beatboxer. And I was the first Black person in that a cappella group for years. Like I was the first person for years, and then slowly, and it was an all female a cappella group, and it slowly started to develop, and it was like 2, and it was 3, and it was 4, and it became, and I don't know if it was the most diverse, but it definitely wasn't what it was when I originally had come in. And so I guess as it relates to well, one, I'm just surprised. Like, I commend all of you for being here and for putting this together, because I wish this existed when I was an undergrad, experiencing like such isolation as an a cappella group member, but also like watching people perform music that I really loved, and really just not even understanding me as a human, or how to see me, or how to talk to me, or, you know, what like just in general didn't understand me, and didn't really try to, and would care for me. And so I just really appreciate the work that y'all are doing to really ask yourselves the right questions, like the hard questions, so that you can make the right move. So thank you for that. And my advice to POC people at large: stay Black or brown. Straight up, do that, do it relentlessly, and do it fearlessly. You are beautiful, you are loved, you are whole. You are not worth something just because like you offer something. You are worth because you just exist. Yeah, yo, I just have so much love, and you know, I can only imagine what you're going through on campus, or what you're going through in these student orgs. But the work is important, and there's so much of the work that starts in undergrad and grad, that really becomes foundational to the work that folks are doing outside of university and outside of academia. And it's hard work, and it's necessary work, and keep doing it. But also take a nap. If you don't feel like doing it, don't do it. You know, it's not your obligation to fix the problem, but it is appreciated when we're doing it together for everyone's liberation. So there's that. And for non-POC people, I would say, yo, stay in the work. It's hard, and it's uncomfortable, and it sucks. And sometimes you think it's about you, and you think it's about your family, and about being bad people, and it has nothing to do with the I or the me. It has everything to do with something that you, unless you're enacting it on purpose, then figure out yourself. But like I think that, you know, I think that the system at large, it makes you think that you have a benefit, when in fact white supremacy is an ailment to us all. And when you get rid of it in yourself and in your world, you're not helping Black people, but you're helping yourselves, or brown people, or POC, you're helping yourselves, and you're helping us all to find love and higher consciousness that we all deserve. And so stay in the work even when it's hard, because you're also loved, and you're also light, and you're also whole, and you also deserve just because you are. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for just once again, just sharing your experiences, like relaying these words of wisdom. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, y'all.
Okay, so we do have like your information. We're gonna share the screen so they can see like where to look you up again. Yeah, so, yep, so yeah, you can check out Oompa with this link here. They also, once again, check out their album, Cleo. It's a banger. I'm not gonna lie, it's really good. Also, she just released a new single called Closer, so check that out as well. So thank you again to Oompa for coming. Really appreciate it. All right, thank you. Okay. All right, so now for the next part of this conference, where we asked members of the a cappella community to fill out a form where they could anonymously share their experiences within the a cappella community. So we just selected some of those responses. There were a couple of students who said that they would be comfortable speaking, so I'll just turn the floor over to them.
As an international student from the Philippines, transitioning into the a cappella community was initially very difficult. Given the general lack of diversity in the community, it felt isolating at times to not be able to relate to others. I also struggled with having a vocal presence in the group because I felt like there were other members who had stronger opinions or louder voices than me. I consider myself to be an extrovert, but in my culture, it is seen as disrespectful when you talk over others or dominate a conversation. Thus, I chose to stay silent in most situations. I'm happy to say that I've since felt more at home in my a cappella group, as we now have more POC members and have taken strides to have a greater understanding of those who come from different backgrounds. However, the feeling of alienation made me realize how undiverse the a cappella community really is. I deeply empathize with the other POC members of the a cappella community who still haven't felt welcome in their groups.
At the time when I was auditioning for an a cappella group, I found that the lack of diversity made it difficult to navigate and decide who I wanted to audition for. The stark contrast between cultural religious groups like Suno and Mustard Seed that were predominantly non-white, and every other group that was predominantly white at the time made diversity feel polarized in the community. For me, as an Indian American, it felt like I was choosing whether I wanted to be in a group that either amplified my Indian identity, or a group where I was isolated as one of the only Indians or POC members, if not the only. And while I really, really appreciate the presence of culturally aligning groups like Suno, I mentioned Suno just because that's, the main group kind of that sticks out to me for a group that's part of my cultural identity. And I think they're just so important to have. I personally would have loved to see more of the groups at BU, those without affiliations, cultural, religious, that have a greater diversity of members so that people like me who might consider themselves somewhere on a spectrum of cultural identity, or they might just want an experience in a non-cultural a cappella group, could have more choice in looking for a community that wouldn't make them feel like becoming a member would mean being outlined or tokened as any particular race or identity. I just want to add that promoting diversity in groups gives individuals more power in their decision of how they want to explore their inner identities at college. And I know so many other individuals don't even have the option of joining a group that embraces their cultural identity. And so feeling like the token member of their race may be their only option. And so limiting this opportunity to explore and choose, and with the way that the a cappella community is now, I feel can make that a lot harder for individuals to have that agency in who they want to be. And that can feel really isolating. So I'm really excited that this is something that we're discussing more in the a cappella community today.
Just a quick thank you to Annika and Tara for feeling comfortable enough to share your experiences in the space. Obviously, it takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable enough to open up about these kinds of things. So thank you again. And now we're going to read some responses from those who had chosen to stay anonymous. So my members have volunteered to read these anecdotes, so I'll turn over to them. Obviously, we recognize that we are a group that is made up of predominantly white members. So just for this portion, they're going to speak with their cameras off to give the fullest extent of anonymity.
I noticed that blank seems less racially diverse than other groups. I know they call back BIPOC, but it seems like maybe either they're not accepting or aren't making BIPOC people feel at home, so they don't end up with any in their group. I think the rest of the predominantly white groups seem like it's more a result of BU's general population.
There have been songs I've pitched for our group to perform, but they'd be shot down to our group being too white. Phrases like that made me feel left out as one of the 2 Black members of our group. I think the lack of diversity in music we perform contributes to the lack of diversity in people interested in joining our group.
I think for the most part, I'm better off than most people, but there have been small things where my name will get mixed up with another person of a similar identity.
Yeah, so I think it's very telling that there's a similar trend of isolation or exclusion among these responses, even with something that's as seemingly small as mixing up the names of members with a similar ethnicity to yours. It can be very, very isolating. So that's definitely happened to me before, and it's felt like a loss of identity. So just the feeling of not having people who relate to you or who understands you kind of perpetuates this lack of diversity. And also with regards to like the rep, I've definitely also seen this even in my own group. And for me personally, it's really hard for me to enjoy what we perform because our rep is supposed to be representative of the entire group, but oftentimes it just favors the majority. And this is something that can be reflected as we did our hand raise activity. Obviously, if you don't know any POC artists, or if you don't know any songs by POC artists, then that'll be reflected in your rep and just feed into that lack of representation. And I also just want to address the statement that, you know, other people might have it worse. I've definitely used it myself when faced with microaggressions and adversity. And while other people might have it worse, that shouldn't by any means minimize the experiences that you faced at all. And I just want to, last thing, I just want to address the fact that like a lot of the responses that we did receive were from juniors who joined freshman fall. I've also been in my group since freshman fall, so I just think that it's really important that we recognize that these are people who have been in the a cappella community for a while, and these sentiments are still present going on 2 years now. So it just, for me, it just highlights the importance of having a conversation like this. So you've seen the statistics, you've heard from our awesome guest speaker, and you've heard from the members in our own community. So right now, we're gonna place everyone in breakout rooms for around 10 minutes. So the main goal of these groups is to just talk about the things that you've learned during the conference, and just try to come up with potential solutions that we can implement. So just make sure that in your group that there is one person who's taking notes and one speaker who's assigned to speak about what was discussed in your breakout rooms. These groups will be randomized because there's not really a time where we as a whole community can convene like this. So we just wanted to utilize the opportunity and have everyone join in conversation with another. We'll have 2 of our members, so 2 of the sweethearts in each group, just to make sure that things go smoothly and that there's no awkward flow in conversation. So I'll put a link to an Excel document in the chat right now, so everyone can take notes and write about whatever you guys discuss in your group. So let me do that real quick. Okay, so that's the link. And then I'll also be putting in some questions that we'd like you to address in your discussion. Okay, so we're gonna go into breakout rooms right now. Oh, okay. All right, welcome back, y'all. All right, so we're just gonna begin sharing what was discussed in those breakout rooms. We're just gonna go down the line. So who is the assigned speaker in group 1 that would like to discuss what was in your breakout room?
I can speak for the group since I was taking down notes, putting it on the document, but some of the things that, you know, we realized is like the cyclical nature of exclusivity, like the lack of diversity and rep as well. And some proposed solutions that we've created are like maybe holding blind auditions to allow people to remain anonymous, to diversify the rep and ensure that, you know, credit is given where it is due when you know, if you want to expand your rep and do songs by artists from different cultural backgrounds as yours, and promote activism in the group to create an environment for more POC members to feel encouraged to audition and feel more comfortable. And also another thing that we thought of is like maybe doing like semestral check-ins or setting the right tone in the beginning of a semester, to just ensure that, you know, people are given the opportunity to express how they've been feeling, and to give everyone the opportunity to voice out any concerns or struggles that they've been facing.
Thank you. All right. Can the assigned speaker for group 2 want to share?
Hello, that is me. So in our group, we talked about a lot of the same things as group 1. And we also talked about like one of the solutions could be reducing fees or getting rid of fees for semesters for a cappella expenses, because that can be a barrier for people who want to sing but might not necessarily have the extra money to pay for that. We also talked about how branding, especially like Instagrams, promo, stuff like that, that can really drive away potential members if they see that there aren't people in groups who look like them, or people who do look like them in groups. That can be a drawing factor. We also were talking about picking people and auditioning, the audition process based on like picking people off of vibes, and how that can really deter people away, because you really don't get to know someone until you are with them practicing every week, and just basing it off of a callback in an audition isn't really a good judge of character.
Thank you. Group 3.
Yeah, I'll speak for group 3. So we talked about how
we need to have more BIPOC leadership in leadership positions, because it's important to the group to be represented by people who are representative of people of varying backgrounds. And we spoke about how we need to be more proactive in having conversations like this within individual a cappella groups and within leadership from individual a cappella groups. And we spoke about like amending the audition process, because people who did virtual auditions said that they had more diverse people auditioning, a more diverse set of people auditioning for a cappella this semester. So that could be potentially something that we keep going with. And also a couple groups transitioned from being co-ed to all gender identifying, which they believed helped increase interest in participants and people auditioning. So that could be something that we could do too.
Okay, thank you. Group 4.
Awesome ideas thus far. Love these conversations. But so I was in group 4. We had a lot of great discussion, and it seemed like one of the largest themes that we turned back to was actually about the audition process, because I feel like that's where really this issue is almost rooted. Because a quote that I saved that I really liked was that a lot of BIPOC members would walk into a room, do a quick scan and say, okay, who am I auditioning for? And then feeling that instant moment of underrepresentation. So that was a large theme that we discussed. Another one was pitching, and then just having more discussions about the rep and how there would be a solution or some way to find more inclusivity within pitches, and how to better represent members that do not feel their representation or do not necessarily feel represented by Beatles or Beatles medleys that some groups are doing. So
Okay, thank you. And now we're gonna hear from group 5. Okay. Sorry.
And so my group touched on a lot of the things that the other groups touched on. But I think one thing that someone brought up that was a really great point is that some of the stats were not really very surprising at all, but they were good to think about for future conversations. And conversations like this are really helping to hopefully unify the a cappella community, and hopefully we could continue to keep doing activities like this. And one thing is also having a more diverse pitching process. That's what we really talked about, and making sure that we're not limiting our songs to one genre, because that really just like rabbit holes you down into one specific genre and type of music. But it's really, really good to have different types of music, as we were kind of talking about earlier with Oompa. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So thanks to everyone for sharing. We really appreciate it. We're gonna bring up the presentation back up again. So just stand by for a quick second. To this conference, we as a group, the Sweethearts, we also had a conversation that was kind of similar to this. So we're just going to share what we had discussed as a result of that meeting. All right, yeah, so we call it the 4 C's. All right, so first, we plan on continuing this conversation of diversity within our group, and we really encourage all the other groups to do this as well. We'd love to, in the future, expand this conversation to other topics, such as religion and LGBTQ+ representation within the BU a cappella community. I know we've like touched on this like a couple of times, but intersectionality is super, super important. Actually, one of the responses that we had received in our forum was about the lack of LGBTQ+ representation in a cappella. And then another response was about the lack of Jewish representation, which is something that admittedly we didn't even realize ourselves. And like I said, while this conference is directed towards racial diversity, we just want to make sure that these concerns that were raised are recognized and acknowledged as well. So it's just some food for thought in moving forward. Okay, we also thought of the idea of creating a committee for POC in the BU a cappella community. Ideally, this would be made up of POC, obviously, and we just hope to have a representative from each group. And the goal of this committee would just be to hold groups accountable for implementing the changes that they said that they would today, and to just create a safe space for POC within the BU Acapella community. Great. We plan on holding an annual diversity event with some of the cultural groups on campus, kind of like Umoja. This would be like an ordinary a cappella event, basically, but just, you know, with that collaboration. So the goal of this is to just assist in learning about the culture and just to avoid things like appropriation. We just want it to be educational as well as fun, because we think it's really, really important to diversify the music, which is something that we've all kind of, you know, reiterated today. And lastly, we would like to create a diversity statement based on everything that was discussed today. So all of the solutions that we've talked about are going to be combined into one document, and each member of the a cappella community, we're hoping, will sign this document in order to demonstrate that we're all unified in our efforts to combat this issue. We would appreciate it if each group could post the document on their socials once it's all said and done, or on their website, just to demonstrate that this isn't an empty effort. And this will also encourage those who are possibly hesitant to join a cappella, just to show them that this is a safe and welcoming space. All right, so we're in the home stretch, I promise. All right, so intersectionality, we've discussed it several times, but it's important. As previously mentioned, we're aware that we didn't discuss every aspect of diversity, but it's definitely important to keep them all in mind. Just make sure that within your groups, everyone feels welcome regardless of their race, their gender, religious orientation, sexual orientation, etc. Again, we hope that this encourages other groups to continue the conversations, to hold more conferences in the future, and to just make more conscious decisions in your interactions with your fellow group members. All right, so on behalf of the Sweethearts, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. Y'all have really made my abstract plan become a concrete reality. I just want to give a shout out to my members also, because, you know, without y'all, I wouldn't have been able to do this. So, you know, we've kind of just been busting our asses, for the past month. And so I'm just glad that our efforts weren't wasted. To everyone who completed the survey, who sent in an anecdote, who's here today, thank you. To the white people that are here today, to confront your privilege is a really uncomfortable thing. So I appreciate y'all coming in with an open heart and mind to absorb everything and to just be an active member of this change. And to the POCs, regardless of the degree to which you felt marginalized, tokenized, and alone in your community, I hope that we just continue to support one another and lift each other up. To everyone outside of the a cappella community, whether you're a BU student or not, I hope that you take what was here today and apply it to your own community, because you can become allies and pioneers in this fight. Work with other POCs, work with marginalized groups to create your own conference, to create your own conversation, but just don't stay idle, because ignorance is no longer an option. And just overall, I just hope that it's created a greater sense of awareness on both sides, and that we hold ourselves accountable to the promises that we've made today, and that we become more cognizant of the members in our community. So we'll be sending out the diversity statement later this week, so stay tuned for that. I know that some people weren't able to attend, so we'll send out the Excel link just so everyone can like read through it on their own time. If you have any questions or comments, we have our email and our other socials. So yeah, that's all we have. Can't wait to hear from other groups in the future. And we'd like to thank y'all again for attending. So, and I hope you guys stay safe and stay healthy. All right, that's it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ah!